a sanctuary we offer to the broken, the weary, the lost. It's a gesture of hope, isn't it? Opening your heart, your life, and sometimes even your soul to keep the storm away from someone else. But let me ask you this, what do you do when the very walls you built for them crumble not under the weight of the storm, but by the hands of those you sheltered? It's laughable, isn't it? The irony. They came to you with pleas and promises, whispers of gratitude dripping with honey. You gave them your time, your effort, your belief. You were their fortress in their darkest hour. But the moment they felt safe, the moment they felt secure, the ruin began. Stone by stone, they dismantled the sanctuary. Not for lack of kindness, not even out of necessity, but because they could. You see, in their eyes, your generosity was never a gift. It was an expectation. And that, dear listener, is the brutal twist. People often confuse shelter with servitude. They start seeing your kindness as a leash, a restriction on their freedom, so they tear apart the very place that shielded them, leaving you to stand amidst the rubble of shattered trust and broken dreams. Betrayal. It's one of the heaviest words in the human experience, isn't it? We don't just stumble upon betrayal. It strikes us from close quarters, from the people we've trusted, believed in, and protected. It comes from those we allowed into our safe space, the ones who stood beneath the roof of our efforts, sheltered by our kindness. You saw someone drowning, someone grappling in the storm, and instead of walking away like the rest, you opened the gates of your life and let them in. You gave them shelter, not just the kind that shields the body from cold winds or relentless rain, but the kind that embraces the soul. You became their home when the world had exiled them. You tended to their wounds, offered them strength, and wrapped them in the warmth of your loyalty. Your generosity wasn't because you wanted something in return. It was simply who you were. And for a while they stayed. The storms in their lives passed as they leaned on you. They healed, grew stronger, regained their footing. You felt pride in being the source of their newfound stability, in knowing that your existence was the cornerstone of someone else's survival. They might have looked at you with words of gratitude, maybe even tears of appreciation. For a time, it felt like everything you had done, all that you had given, was worth it. But then, something began to shift, slowly, quietly. They no longer saw the roof above them as a symbol of your care, but as a shadow over their freedom. The walls that protected them felt like boundaries holding them back. It was subtle at first, the dismissive words, the lack of acknowledgement. They grew more comfortable, not just in your shelter, but with the idea that they could demand more of you. And demand they did. Your energy, your patience, your spirit, once gifts offered willingly, were now debts they thought you owed. And as their perception twisted, the inevitable began. They took what they could, chipped away at the sanctuary piece by piece, not realizing that every brick was a part of you, your trust, your love. You start to notice the cracks forming, but it's difficult to accept. You remind yourself why you offered them shelter in the first place, clinging to the hope that it was worth it, that they would see the magnitude of what you've given. But people often only value what cost them something, and what you gave was free. No conditions, no limits. Free to them, but costly for you. It's almost surreal when the final blow comes. They leave, or worse, they stay and finish what they started until there's nothing left of the shelter you so carefully built. They walk away from your ruins without so much as a glance back. If you're lucky, they may leave you with questions. What did I do wrong? Did I give too much? If you're unlucky, they leave silence, crushing silence, loud enough to haunt you for nights on end. And the irony of it all, they will find another storm, another person to take shelter in, unaware that what they've lost cannot be replaced. What they destroyed in their search for more is something they may never find again. But that's not your story anymore. Strength is often misunderstood. People see it as something loud, something visible, flexing muscles, shouting over obstacles, or standing victorious on top of mountains. But real strength is quieter, subtler, and often unappreciated. It hides in acts of kindness, in gestures of love, and in moments of vulnerability. True strength isn't about what you can take, it's about what you can give. And when you open your heart, when you offer shelter to someone who has lost everything, you're showing a strength many cannot fathom. To shelter someone means to expose yourself. It means stepping into a storm not because you have to, but because you choose to for someone else's sake. You take on their weight, their burdens, their chaos, and you make it your own. Why? Because you believe in them. You see their potential to rise, their ability to heal, and their humanity underneath the struggles. It's a quiet rebellion against the selfishness of the world, a decision to share your light, even when it costs you a piece of yourself. This act of offering refuge is not without its risks. To invite someone into your life on such intimate terms is to surrender a part of yourself. It's to allow them access to the spaces you guard most carefully, the corners of your soul, the depths of your trust. Vulnerability isn't a weakness, it's a sacrifice. And in that sacrifice lies immense strength. A strength not many will ever understand because they are too afraid to try. It's easy to overlook this kind of strength because it doesn't seek recognition. When you open yourself up to help others, there are no parades, no medals, no applause. You do it because it's in your nature to care, not because anyone will praise you for it. Yet, behind every act of giving, every moment of understanding, lies an incredible resilience. To keep giving even after being hurt, to keep trusting even after being betrayed, that is the kind of strength that moves mountains, even if no one notices. But people don't always understand strength and vulnerability. They mistake it for fragility or dependence, not realizing it requires far more courage to be vulnerable than to build walls. The world teaches people to fend for themselves, to fight, and to take what they need at all costs. When you defy that by offering shelter and compassion, you're challenging a mindset rooted in selfishness. And when others misuse that generosity, it isn't because you were weak. It's because they couldn't see the strength it took to give it in the first place. To offer someone refuge is to acknowledge the humanity in them, even when they've forgotten it themselves. It's believing in their capacity to rebuild, to rise from ashes they don't yet know how to leave behind. It takes an unshakable resolve to hold onto your own light while trying to kindle theirs. People forget that true strength isn't what you do when you're invincible. It's what you do when you risk everything and give anyway. Trust is a fragile thing, yet we often offer it without hesitation to those we believe in. It's invisible, intangible, yet it forms the foundation of every meaningful connection. When you extend your trust, you're not just sharing words or actions, you're handing over a piece of yourself. You build a bridge with your trust, a path for someone to walk across, allowing them to reach the deeper parts of you. It's an act of faith, a leap into the unknown with the hope that the other person will honor what you've given. When you trust someone enough to give them shelter, you're creating a space where they can feel secure, free from the storms of their life. You let them see your flaws, your struggles, your sacrifices, knowing full well that it could all be used against you someday. But you take that risk because in your mind, trust is not a gamble, it's a necessity for growth and connection. In giving, you feel alive. You believe you're helping someone who desperately needs it, and that belief becomes your strength. But trust is delicate. While it has the power to create unshakable bonds, it also holds the potential for the deepest betrayals. Trust can transform lives or shatter them, and unfortunately, not everyone who walks into your life is capable of handling it. They may not even recognize its value. To them, trust becomes an expectation, a convenience. Over time, the effort you put into creating a space of love and safety becomes something they feel entitled to, something they no longer acknowledge with gratitude but instead dismiss as normal. What makes trust so transformative is also what makes it so dangerous. It relies on the other person to honor it. When you hand over your trust, you are giving them the power to uplift you or to dismantle you. And when that trust is taken for granted, or worse, exploited, it's not just the bond that breaks, it's a piece of your spirit. The transformation of trust in such moments is painful, confusing, and deeply isolating. You question not only them but also yourself, your choices, and your instincts. This is where the complexity of trust truly lies. It can grow stronger through acts of love and respect, but it can also be eroded by neglect, indifference, or malice. What began as a beautiful exchange of faith can sometimes devolve into a toxic imbalance where one person gives and the other takes, endlessly. And when the breaking point comes, it's not a moment of abrupt destruction, but the culmination of many small fractures that went unnoticed or ignored until it was too late. In the transformation of trust lies a bittersweet lesson. It teaches you that not everyone who walks into your life deserves the bridges you build. Some will only know how to cross them, never understanding the labor, the care, and the vulnerability that went into each step of its construction. The tragedy is not that they misuse your trust, but that they never learned how to honor its power. Human nature is an intricate web of complexities, filled with cycles that often reveal themselves in the most unexpected ways. At the core of it lies an undeniable truth: people rarely appreciate what they do not have to earn. This tendency is not born out of malice, but is a fundamental flaw in how many perceive value. We are conditioned to equate worth with struggle, to see merit only in what requires sacrifice. When something comes freely, when it's given without a price, it's too easily dismissed, too quickly taken for granted. When you offer someone shelter, be it physical, emotional, or spiritual, you're breaking those cycles. You're presenting them with something extraordinary, a gift they didn't need to fight for, one that wasn't demanded but freely given. At first, they might accept it with genuine gratitude. They may even feel overwhelmed by your generosity, humbled by your willingness to offer what the world often denies. For a while, they might tread carefully, respecting the sanctuary you've given them, appreciating the warmth they've found within it. But human nature rarely stays stagnant. As the storms outside fade and the calm of your shelter becomes their new normal, the perspective begins to shift. What was once a blessing starts to look like a given. The walls you built with care and sacrifice no longer seem so remarkable to them. They start to blend into the background. They forget the effort that went into laying each foundation, the sleepless nights it took to construct a safe haven for them. What was once cherished now becomes an expectation, and slowly they lose sight of its significance. This cycle plays out time and again, not because they are inherently bad people, but because of how deeply ingrained this pattern is in our psyche. When the storms pass, the urgency to recognize their blessings diminishes. Comfort, once foreign and precious, becomes commonplace. And when comfort becomes the new baseline, the mind begins to wander toward dissatisfaction. It looks for flaws, seeks out boundaries, and starts to question the limits of the shelter that was once a salvation. And this is where human nature reveals its darker side. For some, gratitude is fleeting, and entitlement begins to take its place. Instead of valuing what they've been given, they start resenting it. They see the shelter not as protection but as confinement, not as a sanctuary but as a reminder of their vulnerability. They begin to push against it, testing its limits, dismantling the very thing that saved them. It is not cruelty, it's a blind spot in their understanding, a failure to recognize the cost of what they've been given, and the kindness behind it. This is the bittersweet reality of giving freely. of offering what others may never fully understand. The very act of sheltering someone comes with the risk of your generosity being lost on them, of your effort becoming invisible to their eyes. What you gave from the deepest parts of your soul may become something they see as ordinary, forgetting that it was anything but. And in this cycle lies the truth about human nature, a tendency to overlook the extraordinary when it is freely offered. Rebuilding after destruction is one of the most profound experiences a person can endure. When something you've poured yourself into is torn apart, it leaves a void, a sense of loss so deep. It feels as though a part of you was carried away in the wreckage. Yet, within this void lies a unique kind of power, one that most people only discover when faced with the choice to rise again or remain in ruins. To rebuild is not a simple act of replacing what was lost. It is a process of transformation, of taking what was shattered and forging something entirely new. It begins with acknowledging the pain and devastation. The world is quick to push people into moving on, urging them to mask their wounds and pretend they're fine. But real strength comes from facing the destruction head-on, staring at the pieces, and understanding what has truly been broken. This isn't a moment of weakness, it's the first step toward renewal. As you sift through the ruins, you start to see things differently. The parts that once seemed so vital, so indispensable, don't look the same anymore. What once felt like foundations of your life may now appear fragile and flawed, and in that realization comes clarity. The chaos that others have left behind forces you to confront not only the external destruction but also your internal priorities. You begin to see what was worth keeping and what never truly deserved a place in your sanctuary to begin with. Rebuilding demands a patience most people don't realize they have. It's slow, deliberate, and often thankless. Others may not see the progress you're making, they may even dismiss it. But with every step, every brick you lay, you're creating something stronger, something more intentional. Unlike the shelter you first built for others, this one isn't made hastily, fueled by the urgency of their needs. This time, it's for you. And this time, it's unshakable. The beauty of starting over is that it allows for reinvention. You are no longer bound by the limitations of what was. The rules, the expectations, the compromises you once made, those have been wiped clean. It is a rare opportunity to decide exactly what kind of fortress you want to build, who it's meant to protect, and how strong its walls should be. The people who dismantled the first one taught you a lesson, even if unintentionally. They showed you who doesn't deserve entry, who can't appreciate the effort it takes to create something meaningful, and who only brings chaos where there should be peace. Every act of rebuilding is a statement of resilience. It says that no matter how many times you're knocked down, no matter how thoroughly your efforts are destroyed, you will not remain broken. You may bend, but you refuse to shatter. You rise, not as you were before, but as someone who has faced loss and emerged with the wisdom and strength that only come from surviving it. The process may be lonely, but it's transformative. You learn to trust yourself again, to believe in your ability to create despite the risks. You may not have chosen to start over, but in doing so, you discover a depth of power you didn't know you possessed. From the wreckage comes clarity, and with clarity, the blueprint for something indestructible. But let me tell you something. Standing in those ruins doesn't make you weak, it makes you a witness. A witness to the darkness within others, and to the light within yourself. You have learned what they can destroy, and now, you know what you can survive. You see, those who turned your shelter into ruins did you a favor. They didn't destroy your kindness, they revealed their lack of worth. They didn't take away your strength, they gave you the opportunity to rebuild. Stronger walls, firmer foundations, and above all, wiser choices about who deserves the sanctuary of your soul. So now it's your choice. Do you stand there mourning the rubble? Or do you rise and laugh at the absurdity of their betrayal, knowing this truth while they thought they were leaving you in ruins? They didn't realize. You were building yourself into an unshakable fortress. And when they come back, and believe me, you won't have a door for them to knock on. Only walls that echo with the lesson they forced you to learn, that not everyone deserves your shelter. And that sometimes destruction paves the way for invincibility. Question for you. How will you rise from the ruins others left behind? Share your thoughts below.